And we're back. Taylor Gish here.
Michael Pilhofer.
From MSP Fitness, and we're going to bring you another common errors video, this time on the strict barbell press or overhead press. Right off the bat, I think a lot of times folks will approach the bar wrong. We think about where the legs are at, where the feet are at, how things are approaching the bar. Folks are going to, too wide, too little, Goldilocks conundrum. What we want to see is feet at a hip width stance. That's essentially just feet below your hips. And then one thing to add to that is just engage with the floor. Yep. Any type of pressing, any type of pushing. I want to see like toes digging in, glutes squeezing, quads stiff. You want to, throw out the term abdominal bracing, some semblance of tightness through the midline so that you driving a bar overhead has something to push off of.
Yep. And from that killer foundation, and that is crucial, especially as weight gets heavier, let's talk about how we engage on the bar. Grip width in general, I would say, is just slightly outside of shoulder width. So you can kind of think of the index finger. For many of the bars, that might just be right at where the neural points are. A lot of people will tend to go a little bit too wide, and you can also visualize that if I take the bar fully overhead, I generally want to see pretty parallel sort of forearms versus kind of this YMCA sort of vibe. And then from a rack position standpoint, I'd say this is where I see kind of the most common error of so many.
Oh, for sure.
Is this like folded wrist. I don't know about you, but I don't bench press this way, and I'm not going to press this way. I don't roll a dumbbell with my wrist folded back. So we talk about a stacked wrist. I want that bar sitting low in the hand with elbows presented slightly in front of the wrist. That gives me a nice trajectory if you think of the forearm as being kind of the angle of action.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of angle of action, before we even think of moving, we need to become set. And the easiest way that we incorporate this, especially with folks who have trouble with this, when do I breathe? How do I press? At what point? We usually just think of it as like a 1-2 punch, right? That squeezing that I mentioned on the stance, the gripping that Michael mentioned, that's like the 1, the 2, and the third thing's your breath, then we go. So, right? So stance, and now we're ready to go. And that's your sequencing for the set position.
And now that we've got it all set, let's talk about actually moving the bar someplace. So this is almost a straight line. I would say that actually there's a little bit of a backwards trajectory, because if you think of where the bar is versus where we sort of want it over that kind of ear, shoulder, body position, we need to pull that face away, because the face will be in the way. So we always say make a pretty double chin. So you pull that chin back, the bar is in a good position. I will qualify real quick. Let me back up just talking about bar path, or excuse me, rack position. If the bar isn't touching you, that's all right. Don't feel like the bar has to rest on you. We'll talk about other lifts, push press, push jerk, split jerk, completely different conversation. But for strict press, perfectly fine if this bar floats, because we want an ideal position to push vertically.
Once we've secured that great bar path, you've driven the weight overhead, don't forget to finish the lift fully. I think there's this huge mantra, or at least it seems like it's moving through the fitness industry of like shoulders back and down, good posture, sit up tall, boy. That's all awesome. But when we press, we want to fully upwardly rotate and elevate the shoulders like we ought to. The shoulder blades are meant to move around your rib cage as a functioning human being. Make that happen on press by finishing the lift fully, reaching up into that barbell through that strong wrist, and then feeling those shoulder blades reach up in towards those earlobes to that locked out position.
And we always talk about lifts. Any lift that we do in the gym isn't a one-way street. So we've driven the bar up, we've owned that lockout. We don't just kind of slap it back to our shoulder and hope that we can get into a good position for multiple reps. So that eccentric piece, that lowering of the bar, is crucial to put yourself in an ideal position to do subsequent reps. So if we drove the bar up in that good wrist stack position, driving it up, as we come back down, we talk about driving, kind of setting the elbows front, railroad tracks that we talk about, versus a pretty common mistake that we see is the elbows winging out, that kind of everything folds out, you're gonna come down, the elbows are gonna be behind you, your wrist is probably gonna be folded, the bar is gonna be too low, completely set up for failure for those subsequent reps.
Absolutely. Hopefully this has given some of your pressing common errors guidelines to correct. We're gonna have so much more common errors videos, links of which you can find below, and on the YouTube channel, which you ought to subscribe to. More information can be found on mspfitness.com. We'll see you guys next time.